On a bright California morning in 1961, Disney's soundstage sparkled with all the wholesome charm that fans expected from the studio behind Cinderella and Peter Pan. Technicians bustled around elaborate sets, cameras gliding over freshly painted props, and a cheerful crew prepared for another day of filming The Parent Trap. At the center of it all stood 14-year-old Hayley Mills, the studio's most beloved young star. Her golden hair caught the light like a halo as she rehearsed lines, her British accent ringing like a melody across the cavernous space. To the millions who would eventually see the finished film, it was the very picture of a Disney dream: innocence, laughter, and family magic. But behind the gentle sparkle lurked something far more complicated. Sharing the soundstage with Hayley was her on-screen father, Brian Keith, a man whose past bore little resemblance to the world of fairy tales. Though audiences would one day believe they witnessed a heartwarming father-daughter bond, the truth was closer to a quiet, smoldering conflict. Two lives, shaped by entirely different worlds, were about to clash in ways neither studio executives nor fans could ever imagine. The story of what unfolded on that set cannot be understood without first exploring the two vastly different lives destined to meet there. Hayley Mills represented a rarefied English upbringing, elegant gardens, renowned parents, and an education steeped in literature and the arts. Her childhood was a symphony of nurturing voices and gentle guidance, a life where the most pressing concern might be the change of seasons on the Sussex countryside. Brian Keith, on the other hand, came from a harsher mold. His youth was marked by divorce, tragedy, and later the brutal realities of combat. Where Hayley's mornings smelled of fresh hay and tea, Brian's earliest memories included broken homes and, eventually, the roar of wartime engines. It was inevitable that these worlds, one sheltered and serenely cultivated, the other forged in fire, would not blend easily. And when the pair were brought together for a Disney production demanding patience, delicacy, and child-centered warmth, the potential for friction was as clear as the California sunlight streaming through the studio rafters. Hayley Catherine Rose, Vivian Mills, entered the world on April 18, 1946, in London, but her formative years unfolded far from the city's noise. Her father, the distinguished Sir John Mills, was a legend of British cinema, revered for roles that captured the nation's imagination. Her mother, Mary Hayley Bell, was an accomplished writer and playwright whose gentle intellect filled the household with stories and scripts. Hayley's older sister, Juliet, would also grow into a successful actress, making the Mills family a veritable dynasty of the British stage and screen. Yet Hayley's childhood was not defined by red carpets or smoky London theaters. Instead, it was spent on a spacious 400-acre dairy farm in Sussex, where rolling green fields and country lanes shaped a peaceful, almost storybook upbringing. Surrounded by animals and the constant hum of creativity, she grew up confident and curious. A child who understood fame without being consumed by it. This serene environment, filled with supportive parents and quiet English charm, created a girl whose natural poise and optimism seemed to radiate from within. It also set the stage for a career that would feel, at least at first, like an unexpected but perfectly scripted miracle. That miracle arrived when Hayley was only 12. One afternoon, film director J. Lee Thompson visited the Mills household to discuss an upcoming project with Sir John. As the adults spoke inside, Hayley played in the garden, blissfully unaware that her life was about to change. Thompson, glancing through the window, was struck by her lively presence. The crime drama he was preparing, Tiger Bay, called for a young boy in the lead role. But the spark he saw in Hayley convinced him to rewrite the part for a girl. Without so much as a formal screen test, Hayley Mills was cast. The decision proved inspired. Her performance opposite Horst Buchholz in 1959's Tiger Bay captivated audiences and critics alike. Natural and instinctive, she brought a rare authenticity to the screen, earning the British Academy Award for Most Promising Newcomer. Despite the sudden acclaim, Hayley remained grounded. After the film's release, she returned to her boarding school studies as though stardom were a passing summer adventure. But the ripples of her debut extended far beyond Britain. Across the Atlantic, one very influential couple happened to see Tiger Bay, and that encounter would soon propel her to international fame. It began, as so many turning points do, with a moment of chance. Lillian Disney, wife of the legendary Walt, ducked into a London cinema to escape a sudden rain shower and emerged mesmerized by the young actress on the screen. Convinced that her husband had to witness this extraordinary talent, she urged him to watch Tiger Bay. Walt Disney himself soon traveled to London, arranging a meeting with Haley and her parents at the elegant Dorchester Hotel. Disney was in the midst of a casting dilemma for his next major project, Pollyanna. Hundreds of girls had auditioned without capturing the delicate mix of innocence and intelligence he sought. The moment he met Haley, the search ended. Impressed by her natural charm and quiet confidence, he offered her a 5-year, 6-picture contract, again without a single screen test. Pollyanna premiered in 1960 to widespread acclaim, earning Haley a special Juvenile Academy Award, the last ever given. Practically overnight, she became the crown jewel of the Disney studio. For Haley, working under Walt's careful eye was a delight. She described the studio as warm and familial, a place where she felt protected and valued. Walt himself became a surrogate father figure, guiding her with a mix of patience and genuine affection. Cocooned in Disney's wholesome world, Haley seemed destined for a career untouched by Hollywood's darker currents. But life has a way of pairing opposites, and her next major project would bring her face-to-face with someone who embodied experiences far beyond the studio's sunny walls. Brian Keith was born November 14, 1921, in Bayonne, New Jersey, to actor Robert Keith and stage performer Helena Shipman. Acting ran in his blood, but stability did not. His parents divorced while he was still a toddler, and his early years carried the echoes of constant change. He made his first film appearance at just 2 years old, a brief but telling glimpse of the industry that surrounded him. A darker chapter soon followed. For a period, Brian's stepmother was Peg Entwistle, a talented Broadway actress. Their relationship was cut tragically short in 1932 when Peg leapt to her death from the H of the famous Hollywood sign, an event that shocked the entertainment world and left an indelible mark on the young boy. This early brush with loss and instability hardened Brian in ways that set him apart from the sheltered children of Hollywood. Though the stage was in his veins, he carried with him a sense of impermanence and a quiet resilience that would later shape both his career and his personality. At 19, long before the United States officially entered World War II, Brian Keith enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. He didn't wait for a draft notice or a persuasive speech. He simply walked into a recruitment office and signed up. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, he underwent grueling training at Parris Island before shipping out to the Pacific as a radio operator and tail gunner in a Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bomber. His missions were perilous. As the rear gunner, he occupied the most exposed position in the plane, tasked with defending against enemy fighters while enduring punishing dives toward heavily fortified Japanese targets. He flew through what Marines grimly called the Valley of Death, a corridor of sky infamous for enemy fire and staggering casualty rates. Keith's bravery earned him the Air Medal for heroic achievement in flight, but the true reward, or cost, was less tangible. Those years of combat carved deep lines of discipline and blunt pragmatism into his character. He returned from war with a soldier's directness and a veteran's understanding of life's fragility, qualities that would remain with him for the rest of his days. After the war, Brian followed the family trade, but he did so on his own terms. He gravitated to roles that suited his rugged authenticity: cowboys, tough detectives, hard-edged men who carried the weight of experience. Over the next decade, he became a reliable presence in westerns and crime dramas, a performer known for substance rather than glamour. Keith also gained a reputation off-camera for being refreshingly blunt. He spoke his mind to directors, producers, and studio executives alike, unafraid to challenge decisions or cut through Hollywood pretense. Colleagues admired his professionalism, but recognized his intolerance for superficiality. This was a man who had faced enemy fire. Trivial complaints and studio politics held little sway over him. His life had been shaped, not by the magic of the soundstage, but by the roar of aircraft engines and the discipline of the Marine Corps, a background that would soon meet the polished perfection of Walt Disney's most carefully constructed family comedy. When filming began on The Parent Trap in 1961, the Disney studio buzzed with excitement. The romantic comedy required technical ingenuity, especially with the groundbreaking visual effects that would allow Hayley Mills to play twin sisters sharing the screen. Every shot demanded precision. For the movie to succeed, Hayley had to deliver flawless performances twice over, once for each character, often acting opposite an empty space or a stand-in. The pressure on a 14-year-old was immense. Long days under hot lights, endless retakes to perfect the split-screen magic, and the expectation to remain cheerful for the cameras all rested squarely on her slender shoulders. Enter Brian Keith, cast as the charming but gruff father whose reunion with his ex-wife sets the plot in motion. While audiences would eventually adore his easygoing charisma, Keith brought to the set a demeanor forged by war and years of self-reliance. He valued efficiency and discipline, traits that sometimes clashed with the meticulous, almost coddling atmosphere Disney maintained for its young star. Crew members recalled an undercurrent of tension. Keith's brusque style and dry humor could feel intimidating, especially to someone raised in the gentle rhythms of an English countryside. Hayley, accustomed to the nurturing guidance of Walt Disney and her own father, found Keith's gruffness unsettling. She later admitted she utterly hated him during filming, a blunt confession that surprised fans who saw only affectionate chemistry on screen. Though there were no explosive confrontations, the emotional distance was unmistakable. Between takes, Hayley often kept to herself, while Keith remained focused on efficiency and craft. The cheerful family comedy, beloved by audiences for decades, masked a quiet standoff that simmered just below the surface, a clash of personalities as stark as their life stories. When The Parent Trap premiered, critics praised the warm rapport between father and daughter, never guessing at the discomfort beneath the smiles. The film became a classic, cementing Hayley Mills as Disney royalty and adding another success to Brian Keith's growing resume. But for Hayley, the experience lingered less as a triumph and more as a cautionary memory. Years later, she spoke openly about her feelings, acknowledging the resentment she carried toward Keith during production. While she eventually recognized his professionalism and talent, the tension on set left an imprint on her teenage mind, a reminder that not all co-stars share the familial affection they portray. For Brian Keith, the project was one of many, yet it reinforced his reputation as a consummate professional who let the work, not personal sentiment, guide his behavior. The contrast between the film's joyful surface and the hidden friction serves as a quiet lesson about Hollywood itself. The camera captures only what it is meant to see. Behind every perfect shot can lie unseen conflicts, forged from backgrounds as different as an English dairy farm and a wartime bomber cockpit. More than half a century later, The Parent Trap remains a testament not just to Disney magic, but to the complex, very human stories that unfold when two worlds, so opposite in experience and temperament, are forced to share the same stage. When filming wrapped and the press tours ended, Hayley Mills and Brian Keith stepped off the Disney lot and onto very different roads. Hayley was still barely a teenager, her career overseen by Walt Disney himself, and buoyed by the worldwide success of The Parent Trap. Within a year, she was back before the cameras for In Search of the Castaways, 1962, and Summer Magic, 1963, projects that kept her firmly within the wholesome, family-friendly orbit the studio had built around her. Brian Keith, by contrast, returned to a life of varied, often rugged roles. He shifted easily from westerns to war dramas, always playing men who carried the weight of experience. For him, The Parent Trap was a bright but brief stop on a much longer journey. While Hayley remained Disney's golden girl, Brian pursued projects that reflected his own complex nature, rarely pausing to bask in the glow of the film's success. As the 1960s progressed, Haley faced the universal challenge of every child star, growing up under the relentless gaze of the public. By her late teens, she longed to shed the carefully polished image that had made her famous. After completing her Disney contract, she sought out more demanding material, roles that allowed her to explore deeper emotions and adult themes. Stage work in London and New York offered exactly that. Audiences saw a more mature performer, one who could command a theater as easily as she once charmed the camera. Yet she never disowned her Disney years. In interviews, she spoke warmly of Walt's guidance, while acknowledging the subtle pressure of having to remain forever Pollyanna perfect. The sheltered Sussex childhood and the protective Disney environment had given her confidence, but they also made the outside world feel more bracing and sometimes more unforgiving than she expected. Meanwhile, Brian Keith was on the verge of a new kind of stardom. In 1966, he accepted the lead in Family Affair, a gentle sitcom about a bachelor unexpectedly raising 3 orphaned children. For 5 seasons, he portrayed Uncle Bill, a role that revealed a softer side beneath his rugged exterior. The show became a staple of American living rooms and earned Keith a devoted television audience. Colleagues remarked that his Marine-trained discipline served him well in the grueling world of weekly television. He arrived on set prepared, valued efficiency, and treated cast and crew with a blunt fairness that won quiet respect. Viewers saw a kind, patient guardian. Those who worked with him knew the same steadiness came from a life shaped by war and loss. His success on Family Affair proved that the man who once seemed too tough for Disney's gentle touch could also embody warmth when the role demanded it. The two actors rarely crossed paths again, yet their shared project continued to bind them in the public imagination. When Brian Keith died in 1997, tributes poured in from across the entertainment world. Haley, by then an accomplished stage and screen actress with decades of perspective, reflected on their time together with a maturity that her 14-year-old self could not have imagined. She acknowledged the distance that had once felt so personal and insurmountable, but also expressed admiration for his talent and the professionalism he brought to the set. What once seemed like hostility she now understood as the quiet reserve of a man shaped by experiences she could not have fathomed at the time. Age and experience had softened the sharp edges of memory, leaving respect in place of resentment. More than 60 years after its debut, The Parent Trap endures as one of Disney's most beloved live-action films. Generations of viewers continue to be charmed by its clever split-screen effects and the sparkling performance that Hayley Mills delivered in dual roles. The 1998 remake, starring Lindsay Lohan, introduced the story to a new audience and sent many back to rediscover the 1961 original. For fans, the movie remains a celebration of family, reconciliation, and childhood wonder. Yet those who know the fuller story understand that its magic is layered with the unseen realities of filmmaking, the pressure on a teenage star, the quiet friction between co-workers, and the very different lives that briefly intersected under the bright lights of a Disney soundstage. Today, the film stands as both a timeless piece of entertainment and a subtle reminder that behind every perfectly framed scene are real people, carrying their own histories and private battles. The chemistry that delighted millions was, in the end, a testament to their professionalism. Two worlds colliding for a moment, creating a classic whose glow outlasted every difference.